G'day Internet, welcome back to another video, and another one on my Commodore 128D, which has actually become one of my favourite computers. I'm not sure why, but there's just something about it I really like. But for this video, we're going to perform just a couple of small upgrades. We're going to build a Pi1541, we're going to add some anti-static protection to the joystick ports, and we're going to install a LumaFix 128. Now, for the anti-static mod and the LumaFix, Mark from the Retro channel is actually going to join us, primarily because he's done LumaFix before on his Commodore 64s, and also he needs to bring over the anti-static little boards for the joystick ports. So with all that to do, as Adrian Black would say, let's get right to it. So when you buy a Pi1541, this is what you're likely to get. You get the actual Pi1541 and you get a small screen. Most ship with a screen, some don't for some reason, but there's the screen. But obviously that's not all you need. With a name like Pi1541, you are obviously going to need a Raspberry Pi. This is a 3B Plus, and it does the job quite nicely. You're obviously also going to need a micro SD card to put all your bits of software on. I would recommend getting either printing or getting a friend to print you a case, and I'll put a link to in the description for this particular one. It's just off Thingiverse. You're also going to need a power supply for the Raspberry Pi. This is a 5 volt 2.5 amp one, and finally an IEC cable to actually plug it into the Commodore. So let's put this all together. Get a few things out of the way. Right, so this is our Pi1541 and it simply plugs into the GPIO ports on the Pi with a nice thunk. We'll put the screen aside for a second. Now, with the case I've got, this is actually the best time to put the case together. I find it easier to put the top on first, and then the base, and that all sits nicely like that, and we can put some screws into it. And there's that. We can now pop our screen on, which just goes in through these 4 pins, and it goes dink in like that. We can pop the cover, which is part of the 3D print. Mine actually got a little burnt in the 3D printing, which is odd, but I printed it in like super draft mode, so that's okay. And that simply goes on there like that. And that is our constructed Pi1541. Now, the SD card. The software for this can be a little tricky, and I'm not going to try and completely explain it. Yarn Beta did a fairly reasonable video, and I'll put it up there. But the short version is there's about 3 different zip files you've got to download from different places. You've got to pull certain files out of some and certain files out of the others, but I will put this graphic on the screen to give you an idea. And then there's simply a directory called 1541, which all your disk images go into. So that's that, and that simply goes into the bottom there. And we're ready to go. So let's plug this into the 128 and take a bit of a look at it. So here it is here, and all you'd need to do is plug in an IEC connection and your power supply, and it should turn on. And you get your little splash screen, and then it actually does nothing, which freaked me out initially. But when we turn our computer on, it then powers up. So from here, it's really easy to just simply dial up the disk image file that you want. You've got a series of buttons. This is enter, up, down, and a couple of others which don't really do much. And we simply go down, down, and let's go back up to Boulder Dash, enter, down, enter again. It loads up the file, and then on the actual computer, we can simply go load, (8), enter, The screen on the Pi actually starts counting down tracks, and then finally run. And the game loads brilliantly. So that's pretty much it. That's the Pi1541. It's really simple to put together, and apart from a little fluffing around with the software, it's really simple to use. Now, does it do anything massively more than an SD to IEC? Not really. People claim that it is more compatible. In saying that, there was never really anything I threw at the SD to IEC that wouldn't work. But what I do really like about this is the usability, and that's simply having a screen and a series of buttons to do exactly what you want in regards to swapping disks, loading up files, and all the rest of it. You can run the file browser that you normally use on an SD to IEC from this, and it will do exactly the same. It's basically SD to IEC compatible. But I've never been a massive fan of the way the SD to IEC handles multi-disc programs or multi-disc games. It's you create that autoplay file and you hit a button and it all just kind of seems a bit black magic-ish, and I just simply like having a screen, knowing what I'm doing and hitting enter, and off I go. So that's all that done. The next is the static protection for the two joystick ports. Now, the reason I wanted to do that is simply this, and I'm sure I didn't grow up with Commodore 64s, but I'm sure a lot of long-time Commodore 64 and 128 users know this, and that's you load up a game and you go, damn it, it uses the other joystick port. Now, the problem with that is the easiest way to kill a CIA chip in a Commodore is through static shock through the joystick port. It's basically the #1 killer of that chip. But with a couple of small boards soldered to the bottom of the main board underneath the two 9-pin DIN plugs, we can remove that risk. So before Mark gets here with the actual boards, we need to strip this entire machine down. Now, I've never completely pulled apart this machine, so this is going to be very new to me. So let's start getting things out of the way and stripping it down. Right, with the monitor and everything out of the way, we can turn this around. And I usually start by removing the screws for the power port, because that just simply makes life a little easier. And we can start putting screws into this little tub, which has got about 3 other projects worth of screws in it at the moment. Which one was I using? That one. Right, we then flip it over. And with a different screwdriver, because that one doesn't quite reach, we can remove the 4 screws out of the base. Right, with them out, it didn't actually come out. Right, with them out, we can flip it back over. There's our missing screw. Now it's easy to do from the back. Flip the handle down, because that actually helps keep it all together while you're pulling screws out. And this should lift up and unhook from the front, and that should come straight off, and it does. Okay, so this is the inside of our 128D. All right, now that we can take a better look at it, quick side note, this little cable here is not standard. That's something that I installed when I very first got it, which allows me to change the device ID of the internal disk drive, and that's how I was able to use the Pi1541 as drive 8, because this is currently set to drive 9. It's just a couple of jumper pins, dip switches at the back. So we can start by disconnecting that. I think The best way to remove this is to remove the disk drive controller board first. So let's get rid of its power and its LED, the drive head cable, several other random ones, and this one just here. Come on. Right, got it. Now, screws. We've got one here. And one here. And this being the only part I have had out before, if I remember correctly, it slides one way or the other and then comes loose. There we go. And that's our drive controller board. Put you to one side. What's next? I think we need to pull the front cover off it so we can get the disk drive out. So we start by carefully sliding off the latch, and there's 3 screws along here. Right, that comes off, disconnect the power LED, and that can go away. What's next? I think disk drive. So we've got a series of screws around the outside. One. Now, what of these are actually holding the drive in? I actually don't think that one was. This one that has the earth strap. That one by the looks of it. Is that it? Well, that's certainly enough for the shield. What about the actual drive? I think we need this one. Oh, is that it? That's it. There's our drive out, and I'll give this, I think, a service while it's out. We can put you to one side. Next, I'm guessing power supply. Oops, lost a screw. All right, we'll have to go back and get that. You pop out of there, power switch. Oh, and that's it. Cool. Whoops. What do we got? Oh, another power cable. Right. That's the power supply out of the way. We're finally down to... Oh, look at that. Jeremy actually tested this. When is that? 20th of... about a year ago. Right. So we've got this far. Let's just remove that cable, which is part of the disk drive. Now we need to remove this, which I believe is a whole bunch of screws all the way around the outside. Right, and a thumping huge one that goes straight through the RF shield. Okay. So that's that. What happens now? Does it come out? Is this where it comes out? Yep. I think because we've got ports at the side and ports at the back, it's going to have to kind of come out at a bit of a funky angle. I don't think I'm missing any more screws. No. Right. Finally, got it. There is our motherboard. Let's put the base down here. And now we need to remove the bottom RF shield, which in theory should just kind of... Oh no, we've got some more clips. Of course we do. Right. You and you. There we go. There's our bottom RF shield with our traditional bit of cardboard, so that can go away. And there is our 128D motherboard, which I believe is not that different to just a normal 128 motherboard. I think the only real difference is the keyboard connector, and that's that it's a DB25 connector instead of just a set of pins. I think that's pretty much it. Righto, so Mark will be here shortly with some ESD protection for the joystick ports. Righto, so now that we have the computer stripped down to the motherboard, Mark from the Retro channel has joined us, and he's got something for me to add. What do we actually do with it?
Oh, it's in the electrostatic bag.
Yeah, because it's ESD protection, so you know we've got to
protect it.
Yeah. Well, I thought this is ironic that we're doing this now that I've finally got myself an anti-static mat and wrist thingy. So this is them. If you can see there, there's not much to them. I assume we just snap them in twain.
Yeah.
And solder them. Okay, here we go. Oh yeah. And these just solder to the bottom of the board.
They do.
All right.
It's quite straightforward.
Okay. Well, let's get onto that. Righto, back to our motherboard and our two little anti-static things. So if I've got this right, we should just literally be able to flip this over.
Exactly.
Line these up like that.
Yeah, they'll basically only fit one way.
Okay, and then just solder in the 9 pins?
Solder in the 9 pins.
Alright, let me get my little magnifying thingy so I actually know what I'm doing and give me some light. And watch the exposure freak out on my camera.
Yep.
And some solder. Solder usually helps when you want to solder. Righto. Okay, here we go.
Solder on.
Just get one started so it doesn't keep moving around all over the place. This is actually quite cleverly done with its little half-moon cutouts for the pins.
Yeah. Makes it a very simple process to put in.
And if anyone's wondering about the weird noises in the background, who is it? Winston's come to join us.
Yeah.
Because I forgot to close the door. But that's okay. More the merrier.
Yep. The gangs are all here.
Gangs all here.
Oh, actually.
No, Angus has run away. He's
like, nah, I'm done.
Yeah, Angus, the antisocial one. Alright, that is not the best soldering in the world, but it looks like it should work.
As long as it's not bridged,
no, it
will be fine. Nobody's going to really see it anyway.
No, it's buried under the motherboard and amongst two layers of RF shield. Exactly. under a disk drive in a case.
Never to be seen.
Never to be seen again. Right. let's just get this one in. Good. I gotta be honest, I very rarely videotape my soldering, or if I do, it's from a distance, because it's simply not worth the comments in the comment section.
I usually just fast forward through it so nobody can see what happened.
Wait, I think he did something wrong. Oh, it's gone.
It's gone.
So that's it. I should now be able to swap joysticks to my heart's content.
Yes, without frying a CIA chip. Or possibly even a SID chip. I mean, that's also connected.
Oh, because it does the paddles.
Because it does the paddles. So definitely don't want to lose the SID chip. But yeah, that's it.
Okay, cool.
That's easy.
Right, so what we're going to do is we're going to start putting this... No, let's put the Luma Fix in now so we know how much of this we need to cut.
We need to cut, yes.
Okay, right, let's do that.
Open it up.
Open it up. Da-da-da-da.
Yes, it takes a bit to pry them open sometimes.
Yeah, right. Okay, we're open. Let me clean up some of this old thermal paste because I'll replace that. Doesn't have to be super neat.
No.
Once again, no one's ever going to see it.
Yes, it's going to be buried like everything else.
Like everything else in this computer. Okay, so let's start by removing the VIC chip, I'm assuming.
Yep.
Just very carefully.
And for anyone wondering, the LumaFix basically inverts some of the signals that are coming out of the VIC2 chip, which do interfere with the video output. So it basically sends an inverted signal to cancel out any interference coming out of the video out. And that's why it has a bunch of little dials, because it needs to be dialed in so that you don't cancel out too much, but so that you're also cancelling out enough.
Okay.
And
otherwise
also, you just are left with the interference.
Alright, and it's also got a series of dip switches, which there's 6 of them, and according to the instructions, we should start with just having the first 2 on. So let's turn that off. Off. Okay, so that should go in here. I don't think it's going to foul on anything. Right, okay.
Right.
So that's in. We now put our, which I need to bend the pins slightly because I guarantee this is the first time this has ever been out of this board.
Yeah.
Right. And now we have a tower of VIC2.
Yeah.
Now
that should be interesting.
That should be interesting. Right. Let me also now add to this by up in a drawer here I have, now these are just cheap and nasty ones from Jaycar, but they will do the job. We have some heat sinks because the VIC does get quite warm.
Certainly.
So these are just self-adhesive ones, and we will obviously make sure that there is at least one dead center over the core.
Yep.
And then we just, purely for the sake of it, we can put a couple more
Put
on
a couple
there,
more.
just to help with getting rid of some of the heat. All right, they're on there. We can still get to our little dials, but you can probably already tell that we have a small problem. That's not going to go back on there. Right, so
I think it looks good like
that's fine, you know, especially once we put all the other RF shield and all the rest of it on there. So let me grab a pen, because what I'm thinking of course, that's a dead pen. Pencil will do. Right. So what I'm thinking is simply cutting this straight across, but we need this screw hole here because the RF shield screws to that. So I'm thinking of just cutting it straight down that line there. What do you reckon?
Yep, that'll work.
Okay.
It'll still give us access to the dials if we need it.
Yep.
And
the RF shield, well,
that'll...
2/3 of the RF shield can still go back on.
Yeah.
Righto, I'm going to run off to the garage and use some power tools, and I will be back in a minute. I have returned from the garage, and I have neatly cut that off. The only thing we're going to have to do now is let's clean up this old
thermal paste.
Just give that a bit of a bend. And right,
some fresh stuff.
It literally needs the tiniest of. That's probably too much. Yeah. And this should just go back on. Yes, and yep.
Neat.
That's actually not too bad, you know. That's better than I expected. Right, so what I'm going to do now is we're going to mostly reassemble the computer, basically everything except for the top cover, because we should, in theory, if our plan is right, still be able to get to these adjustment dials. Now, you already watched me curse and swear on pulling it apart, so I won't put you through the same thing putting it back together, so we will be right back.
So it's time to start tuning this thing, the LumaFix 128. So let's get to it. As you can see, it is quite nasty at the moment. Alrighty, so we're going to adjust the LumaFix board. Basically, there's 6 dials, only a couple of them are currently active. So we'll start with the first one. And you should be able to see that the vertical bars are slowly disappearing. And if we keep going, they'll eventually start coming back. So there is a sweet spot. Whoa. It's back a little bit. It's right around there. So let's move on to the second dial. And yeah, you can see hopefully that there's a checkerboard pattern. Hopefully the camera's picking that up. So we'll dial that back. Ooh. And that's, I can hear it clicking, so that's as far in as we can go. Are any of the others active?
No, not at the moment. We switched off.
Yeah.
The first one.
Yeah. Let's head back to number 1.
It's a bit too far. Back a bit.
Yeah. Yeah, it's right around there. It's about as good as we're going to get. Let's check 2 again. But I don't think we're going to make much improvement. Where are they? Oh yeah, there they are. Yeah, it really is much of a muchness.
Should we switch on a couple of the other channels?
Yeah, I think we'll switch on a couple of the other channels because I can still see there is a bit of interference in there. So
I can see it from back here.
Yep. We'll do that and come back. Alrighty, so channels 3 and 4 are now active. So let's adjust the third one. It's very hard to see much of a difference. I haven't reached the end of it yet, so So it looks like channel 3 is not going to make much of a difference at all. Let's go on to 4. Yeah, don't want to slip too far. That would be messy.
God forbid we short something out.
Yeah, that'd be a first.
Yeah.
Oh, bugger off. Sit. Right.
It's still there.
Still there. I think we're getting a bit more horizontal lines now. So let's back that back off. Are we? Oh no, there's some checkerboard. So let's dial
Go
that
back,
back.
go back.
Go back. Make it better. Surely I've reached the end of that by now. These tiny little things, it's really hard to hear them click or feel them click when you've reached the end. I must be at the end. So,
Should we go back to 1 and 2 and see?
yeah, let's see if we can clean that up. I think 1 makes the biggest difference. So,
Oh,
ooh, that actually looks quite good.
it was that final touch.
Yeah. Do we dare adjust anymore?
Maybe just have a quick go at number 2 again.
Yeah, let's see.
No, I can see.
Oh, I've reached the end. Okay, let's go back the other way. It should become... I think it's going to become
Yeah,
worse.
there
There
we go.
we go, there's the checkerboard. So you're definitely dialed pretty much all the way back on that one. Yeah, it's clicking. That's as far as it'll go.
You doing pretty good with that? It's
I
better than it
think
was.
that is pretty damn good. I
Alright.
can't really fault it. Let's have a look. 128 mode. Yeah,
Yeah,
I think that's pretty damn good.
yeah. And let's be honest, you see it worst at the ready prompt.
Yeah. We
the
could
high-
fire up a game, but yeah. As Jason said, it's pretty much at the ready prompt where you can see it, especially in the C64 mode. That's pretty sweet.
That's not bad.
Considering what we started with.
Yep.
Yep.
And
Yep.
that's a 30-year-old monitor.
Yes. Can't expect too many
Don't
miracles.
expect too much. All right, let's put it all back together and wrap this thing up.
Yep.
So that's a 128D all back together with a nice video tune by Mark here. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on.
I can now change joysticks to my heart's content without having to worry about frying the computer.
Always very important.
Always very important.
Yeah.
And all in all, I'm really happy with it. And the Pi1541 is going to make a huge difference to what I can actually do with this thing as well. I might actually have to spark up some GEOS because I do have a 128.
Yes, that is very true. At least use it for something.
Yeah, that's true.
Apart from Commodore 64.
Apart from Commodore 64 mode. Actually, give me a sec. Somewhere up here. I haven't actually used this yet. I've got a PS2 adapter for the 1351 mouse, so I'll be able to do that. But all in all, that's it for today. Thank you for being on the channel.
Thank you for having me.
And
We had a good time.
We did. And we'll see you in the next one.
Bye now.